Welcome to the Quote Advantage Random Thought Show, proudly brought to you by Iron Edge.
The show where we talk about anything and everything in fitness and high performance.
Welcome back to the show. How you going, Darren?
Good, Jacob. How are you?
I'm very well.
That's good.
So part of my organised August has been going back through the back catalogue of the show and getting all the episodes and the URLs and the links and the blog articles and the resources all sort of sorted. And I noticed that we haven't actually, I can't believe this, we haven't actually done an episode specifically on all the bits about vertical leap.
Are you sure?
We've done parts, we've done box jumps, we've talked about neural fatigue in vertical leap, we've talked about mobility in vertical leap, but we haven't specifically just gone, all right, start to finish, what
Everything
makes
you
good
need
jumpers.
to know.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I thought, why not?
We should definitely talk about that.
Definitely something that's, because, so stats wise, the average athlete at Quote Advantage improves their vertical by 7 centimeters in their first program.
Yeah, and how long is the first program?
About 8 weeks.
Yeah, which is awesome. Best result, we had Liv Tansalis, what did she do? She went from 28 to 51.
She improved her vertical leap so much in about 12 months that we made a retest because we thought we'd stuffed up the test.
Yeah, I was very, very confident that it had been completely stuffed up.
Like a reach, like the most typical mistake is a reach error.
Yeah.
Where you overestimate the reach or underestimate the reach rather. But no, it was legit.
Huge improvement, yeah. And then last week we had one of our athletes, Lockie. He's improved his vertical by 19 centimeters in the last 12 months.
Crazy stuff.
Which is huge. Yeah.
And he's still only 14 years old.
Still got plenty of upside. And one of our other ones, James, most improved in the last combine. He is killing he's his top end as well. Like it's
he's already in the 70s, so it keeps going up from there, which is crazy.
And we should preface this with apologies, Americans. We know a lot of you listen. We're not attacking you, but we do find that often what happens is in our way of testing vertical, we're very strict on the reach, and so we get a very valid number. We actually make them reach up a little bit when they're testing the reach. It is common in some places where you will not be so strict with that, and you can get numbers that are a bit inflated.
Because you sort of depress the shoulder to keep the reach down on the reach test, and then when you subtract that from the maximum jump, you get an inflated number. Yeah,
because we've had a few people come in and say, "Oh, your vertical numbers are low." It's like, no, our numbers are
phenomenal, but
we test strictly.
Yeah.
So where do we start with vertical?
I think we should start with like what that first program because this is that 7 weeks and that 7 centimeters in 8 weeks improvement. That is pre-plyos. That isn't we throw them on a jump program day one. That's the foundational basic program. So I think we should start with those things and then talk about when you do get to that top end, what things look like at that end.
I like that, but let's go before that and talk about why you should start this stuff young. Then we'll flow into that.
Yeah, great idea.
So one of the most interesting things is when you're trying to teach someone old how to jump, it's so hard. And by old, I mean over 15.
I'm not talking about 40, 50-year-olds.
It's just really, it's an incredibly complex skill. There's so much happening at such a rapid pace. And to teach that elasticity to someone that doesn't have that, doesn't have some sort of a grounding in that is really quite a thing. So the best thing is you do want to start doing some form of this stuff relatively early.
Because it's elasticity and it's rhythm too. There's a large
timing element,
proportion of just this intuitive rhythm and coordination that goes on when you jump that if you haven't just intuitively practiced it, you will struggle to learn that in a rote sense later on.
And it raises an interesting point. I think the fact that some people are such absolute naturals at it, it makes people say that ridiculous thing, oh, you've either got it or you don't. It's like, no, that's really lazy. Like you can definitely improve it dramatically. And Liv's the classic example. You would not have thought she had so much improvement to make, but because she got really strong, she maintained the same strength, the same body weight, but quadrupled her strength and learnt how to jump. And so it's very lazy to go, oh, well, you've like definitely. We're all on a continuum of blessedness with vertical.
In terms of type 2 fibers and tendon lengths and things like that?
All that stuff. But that doesn't mean you can't make humongous improvements. Very occasionally, and I would say somewhere sub 5%, people do everything right and they get mediocre results. They get some improvement, but it's not much. They're low responders in terms of vertical.
And they just don't have that twitchiness.
And they just don't seem to be able to develop that, But 95% of people, you can make a significant improvement. Even people who are really good. The classic was I had an athlete a long, long time ago, Jason, who was a kid who sat in the console. He was 16 years of age, 15 years of age. I reckon 16, yeah. And he said, I want to improve my vertical. And I was like, cool. He was about 6'4", so I thought, was asking if he could dunk. And I said, can you dunk? And his dad's sitting there. He said, yeah, you can do a standing 182 hand.
Not bad.
Which means standing away from the rim without a run-up and turning around and stuffing it through the rim with 2 hands.
So it rotates mid-air off 2 feet.
Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Just crazy. And I was like, all right, challenge accepted. But that's not my preferred start point, because it's like, well, you've probably maxed out that quality.
You've got so much genetic potential and you've probably practiced so much that you've already got the rhythm, the coordination, the springiness, the blessedness.
Yeah.
There's not that much left to be gained.
So I was a little bit nervous, to be honest. And then about 6 weeks in, I said to him, okay, how's it all going? And the thing that made me less nervous was he had horrible squat. So I did feel better because of that.
So his fundamental movement patterns weren't actually that great.
His movement pattern for jumping was beautiful, but every other pattern he had wasn't as great. Yeah. Anyway, so fast forward 6 weeks, I said, how's it all going? And have you noticed any improvements? And he's like, oh, not really. And I was...
Classic teenage response.
and I was kind of, I was really pretty flat. And then he goes, but I did hit my head on the backboard last week, and that hasn't happened before. So I was like, that's an improvement. That's good.
Nice.
This was before we were regularly testing vertical. So it's one of the big reasons that it's really important to test. People will often actually jump significantly higher, but they'll report back to you. They'll just say, if you ask them if they're jumping higher, they'll be like, oh, a bit. But what they say is, what I'm really noticing is it's way easier to jump.
Yeah, that's a big thing that people report is they notice I'm jumping about the same height, but I'm doing it with way less effort. So it's an easier jump.
And they're actually jumping higher. They just haven't noticed it. But what they notice is the easy jump. So that's why it's really important to be tracking that.
Yeah.
Because we were actually, when we started doing the combines, we were pretty blown away by just how much improvements were going on.
Even in the more advanced athletes who are, already in the...
Once you thought were maxed out kind of?
30 plus inch or 70 centimeters plus on their vertical, we're like, oh, okay, if we can just hold that over the next 3 combines. But athletes just each combine adding a centimeter or 2 and just creeping their way up. Yeah. It's really impressive. So I think we should talk about the factors going on.
Yeah. So we've established that everyone, virtually 95% of people can improve. Some people can get profound, game-changing improvements. Like if you can add anything, any double-digit addition to your vertical, that's big for a lot of sports.
Puts you in a whole different level in terms of athleticism. Yeah, you're competing on a ballpark.
I mean, not for hockey. Not really going to help with hockey.
Less hockey, but most other, even sports like swimming, like block starts, turns, really very important to have lower body power and explosiveness. So the improvement you can see on your vertical leap will translate to sports like that as well.
We put a lot of work into that. Some people would look at our swimmers programs and say, well, why are you bothering with the plyos and the jumping? It's like, no, that short, particularly for short course, how good you are off the blocks and then how good you are out of the turns. Those turns are just, it's underwater lateral jumping.
Exactly, it's huge. Well, it's vertical though because they're laying flat, so
it's not even lateral jumping.
It's vertical. Okay. So I think we should start with movement skill. Okay. So I think that's one of the misunderstood ones. And then go through the different factors and how we train them and what we do.
Okay. And so when we talk about movement skill, we probably have to talk about mobility.
I thought we'd follow with mobility. I thought we'd talk about patterning first and then go into mobility from there.
Go with movement skill.
I'd like to flesh out a little bit about Jason's example from before, how you talked about he had a beautiful jumping pattern, but he had a terrible squatting pattern. A lot of people listen to be like, well, that doesn't matter. His goal is jumping, specific adaptation to impose demands. He's already a good jumper. Why does the squat matter? Why does something like a squat, a hinge, these sort of bilateral strength movements, why do they matter so much when it comes to your jump?
Good question. I think it matters because it's a method to bulletproofing. So there's an incredible amount of, and it's the reason it's called jumper's knee, there's an incredible amount of people that have knee problems. And I've seen again and again and again, these elbow to the rim dunkers, these amazing athletes who are kind of tapped out by the time they're 20 because they just didn't cope. They were unable to cope with the forces they were able to put through their bodies.
Yeah, so the thing that made them good also tore them apart.
Yeah, and so it's like they needed structural reinforcement. They needed stability upgrades. So the squat represents a really good opportunity to do that. You can make your quads stronger. You can make your patellar tendon stronger, strengthen up your VMO, which is going to help provide stability. And the VMO stability thing, it is an area there where some people will crack it and say, oh, it doesn't exist, it's not a thing. But if you've ever done a lot of jumping, if you've ever tried to dunk a lot, as I have on a lowered ring, if you've ever done a lot of repetitive jumping, what you notice is vastus lateralis the next day is DOM central, like it really loads it up. And so the lateral structures of your quad get really worked. Medial, not as much. It's
with the actual jumping action.
Yeah, so the squatting kind of rebalances that out a little bit as well, I think. So there's a lot of benefits there. And also you're just getting their brain better at sending a signal. So there's a nervous system upregulation as well.
I think a big part of a good squat and also a good hinge pattern as well, like a core lift or an RDL type pattern as well, is that you teach your athletes to use your glutes. Because naturally, and if you look at EMG stage and stuff, jumping is quite quad dominant.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more knee action and quad action than there is glute action in the jumping. But when you come down, you need your glutes to come part, and you should use your glutes on the way up. That's not to say they're irrelevant, but particularly when it comes to landing, your glutes are a really big deal to absorb those forces so that you can do more jumps without smashing up your knees.
Yeah, so that ability to absorb, that is huge. And also on top of that, I think the fact is that yes, the quads are loaded really early in the jump phase, but as you extend right off, like the last little bit is there's so much calves and glutes as you're actually getting that full hip extension as well.
And also with a jump with a run up, it's going to be more glutes and calves too, because you're going to be taking that elastic energy. You'll need those bigger muscles to come on board as well. Yeah,
for sure. So so you had a terrible squat, and we remedied that. That was really important. And that was just a matter of learning to do that shape and getting stronger without increasing muscle mass by too much. You don't want. The best way to blunt someone's vertical leap is to stack on 10 kilos of muscle in 6 weeks.
Particularly in their upper body. It just becomes a weight belt.
So we did that. And I think that's an approach that we've taken with everyone is let's work on technique, but let's also just get that basic structures in place as well.
Yeah, nice. The other big thing I think for a technique outside basic things like squats and hinges is your arm swing. Arm swing, depending on the study, it makes up 20 to 30% of your vertical leap.
Arm swing is a huge part of it. And it's a thing that if you've got someone that's played a jumping sport and done a lot of jumping, they will be quite natural at it. But it is hilarious how many people have backward, because the arm swing is meant to be kind of a load and explode where you kind of throw your arms down and then the arms explode up as you jump and help to deload your body. But it still blows me away how many people jump with a backward arm swing, like they actually go in reverse order or they don't move their arms at all.
Yeah, so they start with their arms high, and as they squat down, they leave them high and then kind of throw them back as they scooch forward into the jump.
So a good load and explode arm swing, I think, is huge, and it's easy to practice too, because you can practice just going from high to low idea of arms up and then kind of drop into a squat jump pattern. And
aggressively load that squat pattern that you've already learnt from before.
Yeah, and you can do that without having to do any plyos, no jumping, just get that basic shape pretty good. The other thing is that I think it's just if you're going to talk about vertical leap and you're going to talk about training female athletes, I think you've got to talk about I suppose the sociology of it as well. So I talk about this a lot, that boys generally jump a lot higher than girls.
And a lot of people put that down just to muscle mass, things like that. They actually put it down to physiological factors. And that has
They can be factors, yeah, for sure.
But it's not the big one, and you're going to...
Yeah, so the big one is that boys like to show off. Boys, we just, like if you say to a guy, oh, you think you're so good? Like, yeah, tell your mates.
Tell everyone.
I'm pretty awesome. Like we're very comfortable standing out and showing off. Whereas typically, girls are less likely to want, like if you say to a guy, oh, you think you're so good, that's a bit more of a mortal insult. And I've worked with Olympians who are like, oh, I'm not really good. I'm just,
happy to be here.
And even we had Maddie Garrick doing our internship here, and everyone went around the room talking about the sports they'd done, and they introduced themselves. And, so one of the interns has played a certain level of hockey, and they're like, I've played pennant A hockey, and they stand up straight and we get to manage. He's like, oh, I play basketball. It's like, if you were a guy, you would have said, I play professional basketball
for the such and such.
I've represented Australia.
Done this and this.
So it's part of the quality that makes female athletes great team players, and there's all these lovely qualities. But yeah, I mean, the example I give and it's a basketball specific one, is at the end of every training session in the history of civilization for junior training, a boy has tried to touch the net, the backboard, or the rim.
Or done that big run up and then sort of at our stadium there's like this groove in the court where everyone would try their right-handed dunks on a run up.
No one's ever not done it, but girls just don't practice it. So one of the coaches we worked with a bit, Jess May, I remember we did an athletic development workshop here, and part of that is often me taking them through some vertical leap stuff. And we just made them practice jumping, just practice the skill of it.
Max effort jumping too, not just cruise the little jumps, like actually get after the net, get after the backboard.
But we made, and at that point in time, we had a rim in here, so we lowered it down so they could attack that. And she just made them do that at the end of every training session for that season. And she said all of their verticals improved because they were just actually trying. They were just developing that skill of max effort jumping. Yeah, it's crazy.
Because boys develop a feedback loop where they try a thing, it doesn't work. They rapidly iterate on their jumping technique, so they learn how to use their arms better, how to summate their run ups and be springy and all those things. Whereas girls just don't get as many reps of that trial and error type jumping, because so they don't develop at the same rate.
They don't like to show off. So the trick is to create comfortable spaces for female athletes to try really hard on their vertical early on and actually start to get that feel of that springiness off the ground.
That's huge. So huge when it comes to technique.
So I'm getting a little lost. There's so many things to talk about.
Well, that was really just all about movement skill. But I think if we want to sort of tie things back to that squatting idea before, you mentioned you wanted to talk about mobility as well. So I think mobility ties into that nicely as well, because you can't make good shapes without the ability to get your joints into the positions.
So yeah, and the lead domino for that is ankle dorsiflexion. Like, how well do your ankles bend? So if you have great dorsi, you've got just a better spring, and so you can load everything up and it'll come back with interest if you've got good dorsi. So a lack of dorsi is probably the single biggest thing that's going to hold someone back in terms of vertical. So I think if we think about that person who's just started with us, it's going to be the early improvements we're getting. We're getting their dorsi better, so just some knee to wall loosening up, some foam rolling. We're also getting their hip flexors better, because the hip flex is like the handbrake on the Ferrari. So if that's tight, it's very hard to get that explosive hip extension.
So if your ankles aren't loose, you can't get down into the bottom position to load the quads and stay vertical through your body. And then if you don't have the hip flexor range of motion, when you leave the ground, when you go into takeoff, you can't fully open up and use the glutes to help the quads for that last little bit, that last extension through the jump.
And which is huge. And I think that's the huge part of where people are improving. It's just we're taking those kind of two handbrakes off. And the fact that simultaneously what we're doing is we are doing some glute activation and some glute bridging and some squatting, and they're actually starting to learn to use the glutes as well. So it's a small, in that early days, I think it's a small software upgrade, but it's more about that hardware loosening off.
Yeah, just taking the handbrake off the Ferrari.
And then long term, it's if you can make that athlete hinge well, if you can make them strong, and all other things being equal, they're going to continue to month after month jump higher, because they're stronger at the same body weight or at a similar body weight.
Let's talk about strength. Strength's such a big part of it.
Such a big part, and it's not. I don't think it's as obvious, the connection, because like I remember when I was young, I saw a physio who worked with a number of footy teams, and one was very highly reputed. And I just mentioned in passing that I was trying to increase my vertical, because you want to jump higher.
Tell all your friends.
And he said, we'll just practice jumping. And there's that kind of reductionist logic of, it's just if you want to get good at
kicking the footy,
just kick the footy all day. That's all you should do. You shouldn't do anything else.
If you're a swimmer, you should swim.
Yeah,
and that's a big part of it.
It's huge. You definitely shouldn't not swim
or not practice jumping.
Yeah,
it's definitely important.
But you could do that all day, and you're not going to get those improvements. So the strength part's really important.
Because the technique stuff, there will be a law of diminishing returns. So we mentioned that teaching an older athlete, a 15-year-old, to jump, if they've got poor technique, is a lot trickier than just inherently learning it between the ages of 8 and 15. once you've got that pattern and once you've learned how to swing your arms and drop and drive and load and explode and all those things, you can't super compensate on your technique.
Yeah, like your technique it'll get to a point where it's a 9.5, and finding that extra 0.5 is not even going to help that much. No. Like it's good enough and it gets it done. Whereas you got to find the deficiencies. Yeah,
and that's where mobility can be a potential thing. So having a look at your hip flexors, doing more consistent foam rolling and stretching, and those sort of boring things, but that are so beneficial.
Ankles, hip flexors, and probably thoracic mobility as well. If you're stoopy, if you're slumped, it is hard to get that same level.
Stoopy, is that a word?
It's totally a word. Stoopy is a word. Look it up. So those things, and then getting that strength right. And I think as important as squats are, they're not the thing I would choose. If you were if there's an artificial constraint where you could only do one thing, it would be a loaded hinge, because that mimics jumping really nicely.
The trap bar deadlift, core lift, yeah.
Trap bar deadlift's amazing. Yeah. And a lot of people will be quite dogmatic that you've got to do Olympic lifting to increase vertical because it's fast. But the cool thing about the trap bar is you can do fast trap bar deadlifting. Talk about the VBT stuff. That's your
the idea of intent.
Expertise. Yeah.
So strength is so important for vertical because vertical isn't a speed exercise, it's a power thing. So you have to move your own body mass through air. So you have to overcome gravity and create vertical takeoff. And so we did a video diving deep into biomechanics of that. And so the more strength you have, the more force you can apply to the ground, and the quicker you can do it, therefore the more impulse you can take with your vertical. And so the more you can create movement of your own body, displacement of your center of mass. And so the idea of intent and VBT, velocity-based training, is that when you lift, you should lift, and we talk about specific adaptation to impose demands. The idea that you want to be fast, you should train fast. And so the idea of velocity-based training is you should be training with the same intent you would apply to your jump. You wouldn't, you wouldn't do 10 cruisy jumps in the hope that would improve your vertical. So
jumping, you try hard. Yeah,
5 maximum efforts, 1 maximum effort. So when you lift, you should apply the same level of intensity to that lifting, and so therefore you should be trying to explode into the lift and really lift with dynamic effort to create what we call Henneman's size principle, taking advantage of
exploit that, I suppose.
Exploiting Henneman's size principle, the idea of recruiting your type 2 muscle fibers and sending more neural input to your body and creating a greater sort of impulse that way.
So for our sports people at home, walk everyone through the types in terms of type 2.
Fibers, yeah. So we have 3 broad,
because we have a sports science audience, but I think also there's just some people that just are interested,
athletes, and so so there's 3 muscle fiber types broadly. You've got your type 1, which is your marathon fiber. So they can go all day, but they can't give you enormous amounts of power.
So they're very efficient.
They store lots of energy,
work aerobically really well,
lots of mitochondria, all that kind of stuff, lots of blood flow. Then you've got your type 2X. Type 2X fibers are very twitchy, very explosive, but they fatigue really fast. So you've got like 1 jump and then they're cooked, and they take forever to recover, less blood flow, less energy storage, less efficient. Then you've got the ones that are actually really desirable, like your type 2As. These are the ones that are very explosive, but also have a reasonable recovery rate. So they're your glycolytic fibers.
Yep.
And with the right type of training, your body can actually preferentially develop your type 2A fibers.
Yeah, because you've got your indeterminate or intermediate fibers.
Your hybrid fibers.
Yeah, hybrids that can kind of go, they're like a swinging voter in an election. They can go either way depending on how you train. So if you do lots of long, slow distance work, your body will adapt to those ones.
And those, type 2C, type 2BC, all these different, there's hundreds, and they're being discovered every day. They will become more like type 1 fibers rather, or they'll become more efficient and more slow twitch. Whereas if you do strength training, plyometric work, speed training, they become more explosive, more like type 2As.
Which is a good argument for, we've talked a fair bit about what you should do to increase vertical. I think it's also worth talking about what you shouldn't do.
Long, slow distance running.
Yeah, so there is an argument that the LSD, the long, slow distance work, is actually pretty counterproductive to your overall athleticism. So not to say you should be terrified of long, slow distance work, but
it's not like you take the dog for 1 walk and you lose inches on your vertical leap.
But the idea of doing lots and lots and lots of distance work, I think you are going to get adaptations that favour that distance stuff. There's definitely an argument that, particularly in your formative teenage years, you should probably have a bit of wariness about too much running 5Ks, and running 5K slowly, because also, and I read an article, sport-specific fitness, you're probably doing it wrong.
We'll link that. That'll be linked in the show notes.
Because there's the fact that stuff's actually not that effective. Like running a 5K slowly is actually not really effective for anything, I don't think.
Other than running 5K slowly.
Yeah, it's not even effective for running 5K fast.
You know? You're better to run 2K fast 3 times.
Yeah.
You'll actually get better adaptation.
Yeah, and then, so there's still a thing that in Melbourne. There's the Melbourne Tigers train at AMSAC, which is right next to the lake, and so it's really common that coaches to work on the fitness will make the players run around the lake because it's right there. It seems like a good thing to do, but it's actually not that helpful.
It's a whole mess of problems, and it deserves its own episode, which we really do.
Yeah, but what I would say is just don't overdo that side of things. Yeah.
But I think tying back to the intent idea, it's a good time because that idea of doing your long slow stuff for your fitness, yes, you'll develop your 5K slow fitness, not your 5K fast fitness, but then you'll be robbing your ability to create intent and to drive neural signals to your type 2 explosive muscle fibers because they'll be constantly fatigued as well. So not only are you robbing your long-term vertical potential, you're also robbing your acute ability to just jump the next day because there is a low level of fatigue that sits over your body due to calcium depletion and magnesium and all these technical things that are causing you to be, hampered and just running, trying to jump through a fog.
Yeah, trying to jump through a fog.
That's a thing.
Metaphor game is strong.
Not so much. But yeah, I did that. I messed up my vertical when I was a kid.
Yeah, because you worked on your cardio engine way too hard, didn't you?
So hard. I loved my cross-country running and I'd run every morning before school because I was getting so fit from my basketball. And yeah, I could run out 4 quarters, but I was mediocre for all 4 quarters. And so I never developed really good slow twitch.
I love that quote, and I can't name names, but it was a basketballer of ours. And someone had commented on the supreme fitness of another basketballer, and they're like, yeah, that's great. They get up and down the floor amazingly, but what are they going to do when they get there?
Yeah, like they go.
If you're not explosive, it's great. You got from point to point really well, but you still got to do stuff when you arrive at that point.
Which we talked about late last season when we talked about the idea of work rate in football. It's like, yes, your team is covering enormous kilometres, but are they just having effective disposals? Are they being efficient with the ball and efficient with how they run?
Yeah.
So I'd much prefer a player who's high impact, less distance, but every time they're near an impact,
they're an impact player.
They challenge or they change the contest. That's such a big deal.
So in terms of the vertical side of things, so we want to lift fast, good movements, and I think you want to avoid overcomplicating it. I think there's too many people that sink so much time into their Olympic lifting. And, the question that you've got to ask is the juice worth the squeeze? Are they really getting the benefits out of that? It's not to say you shouldn't do it. It's definitely a good activity to do if you've got great coaching. But it's just how much bang for buck are you actually getting out of it compared to what you think you are? Yeah,
I think a lot of coaches and athletes alike, they look at things to do, not qualities to chase. So they look at, so the best athletes, they do Olympic lifting, they do plyometrics, they do box jumps, they do these things. But you've got to look at them and go, they're in a specific situation. What is the quality they're chasing with that? And does your situation allow you to chase it in exactly the same way? Or should you try and replicate that to something that suits your body type or suits your environment better?
Or should you be trying to kind of hack that? Should you be looking at, what's the 80-20 of it? What's the 20% of things that you can do that are going to give you 80% of your results? And so I think, if we're 80-20ing it, it's you allocate 10 minutes a day to mobility and activation. And
that right there, for those athletes who aren't already strong, that's the biggest difference you'll make.
Yeah.
Jump programs, we've done that episode on that. They're a waste of time. They're just going to get you hurt. But if you just pay more attention to looking after your body and keeping, because if you can,
I should say the standard jump programs. There are some good ones, and maybe there's a good one coming soon.
Maybe. But if you, I've lost my train of thought.
Because I did a preemptive, because I put pressure on you with a preemptive plug.
You did.
For a product we haven't even made. Are you talking about jumping?
But yeah, so jumping. And so if you're not already strong and not up that law of diminishing returns curve, if you're just looking to make some, cover the basics with your vertical leap, mobility, activation, get your body moving, because then you'll get into better shapes to create better power. Yeah. Don't worry about learning. Don't worry about all the fancy power creation exercises if you can't even get into the spot that creates the power.
Yeah, the 3 Ps, positions, patterns, and power. Look after the first 2.
In that order. They're sequential for a reason. Such a big deal.
So the 80-20 of it is get the ability to get in those positions, get the patterns with the movements like your squats. And then when we get to power, it's actually just the simplest, the lowest hanging fruit is practice jumping with good intent and take good technique with that.
And jumping away that's specific to your sport too. So if you're a basketballer, you should be practicing 2 and 1 foot. Volleyballers are going to do a lot more 2 foot jumping, whereas Aussie rules are going to do a lot more 1 foot jumping. Yeah. So you should practice jumping patterns similar to the sport you're playing.
And then I suppose the next thing to talk about is plyometrics.
Yeah, and so practice your jumping and then get strong.
Yep.
Would be sort of to tie those up.
To do those things. And you don't have to practice jumping then get strong, nor do you have to get strong then practice jumping. These can all happen concurrently.
Yep.
It's just the emphasis early on should be like mobility, patterns, strength, and then you flow into some power stuff. So you're going to do your hinge, your loaded hinge, so your core lift. You're going to do that fast and well. Yep. And then plyos come into the picture at some point.
And people jump and rush to plyometrics far too fast.
Jump to plyos. But I think because the thing is, plyos look so exciting. They look so fast, and that just makes you feel like you just feel like, oh, I'm doing the thing that I'm trying to be doing. It's such a direct visual link.
Looks so specific.
Yeah. But the thing is, if you are, and I'll circle back to a basketball example and a volleyball, because these are the sports that are doing a lot of jumping. If you are playing basketball or volleyball, you're actually already doing 100 to 200 plyos a week. It's
if not more.
It's just every rebound, blocked shot, attempted dunk. Every time you're doing that's actually you're getting a stretch shortening cycle, and you're actually exploiting the plyometric effect. So
even sprinting is plyometric by nature.
Yeah.
Because to be a plyometric, you need to utilize the stretch shortening cycle, and you need a contact time of less than 0.2 seconds, depending on who you ask and what paper you read. But that means sprinting is a form of single leg bounding plyometric.
And so that's not to say you wouldn't do plyometrics, but I think it's that sense of, if you've been practicing your technique, like practicing technique on something for half an hour, you're probably going to get tremendous results. It may be that practicing for an extra 10 minutes might help you a little bit more, but at some point, diminishing returns kick in, and practicing that skill for 5 hours is actually detrimental. And it's the same thing with plyos. Like if you're already doing that, you're probably maxed out for it.
Especially if your strength bucket's empty. So if you're doing all that sport and all those sport-based plyometrics without being strong and mobile and having good technique, you're actually doing more plyos is overfilling an already full bucket.
And neglecting the empty one. I'm going to throw a big challenge to you. You have done some amazing deep diving into plyos and the great translation debacle of the 1980s.
And earlier as well.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I think plyos, I've personally seen people sustain injuries doing plyos that they probably shouldn't have. And it's partly, I think, because of a lost in translation moment from Russia.
Yeah, so Yuri Verkhoshansky, back in the 50s and 60s, was a Soviet sports scientist and strength and conditioning coach, worked a lot with the Soviet Olympic team, and particularly in track and field. And he had these athletes that were so strong. They were squatting double body weight and full depth squats.
I think it was even 2.5 or something.
Insane athletes. And there's training montages on YouTube that just, like, these are just springy, explosive things. Beasts. And so what he found was that they'd reached the law of diminishing returns with strength. And so he, in his paper,
because you couldn't make them squat. Like making them squat 3 times was not going to give them any benefits.
And they'd run those experiments. They'd tried that, and it actually was a detriment to their performance in terms of their jumping and running. So what he did was he found, to overload their systems, we actually need to add a super maximal intensity beyond just squatting triple body weight. And what he found was that, if you use your own body weight plus the acceleration that gravity gives you with, like, say, a drop jump, you can create that type of load by adding your own body plus acceleration and turn that around into a stretch shortening cycle type exercise. And so I believe that was called this is where I'm a little fuzzy, and this is where the challenge is strong, because if I say this wrong, the whole story goes completely the other way. They invented the drop jump or depth jump.
Depth jump, maybe?
They invented the depth jump whichever they invented, when that got translated to English.
And the depth jump, we should be clear, what their idea was you stand off something high, you jump, and you just worry about absorbing that kinetic energy.
And so the goal on landing off, so I think it was a 60 centimeter height. So you drop off that height, and the aim of the jump is to maximize height. And so you land, you can take a little extra contact, absorb those eccentric loads of your own body, and then try and jump for height. When that was translated to English, the conversion was jump for speed. And so the depth jump became the drop jump, or vice versa.
Where you're literally standing on a 60 centimeter box and you're jumping off and you're trying to jump back up onto another box like it's hot coals, like you're trying to minimize your ground contact time.
Yeah, and so that change completely changed the goal and the emphasis of the exercise, which therefore changed the outcomes.
Yeah, and it's not to say that's it may be that's kind of a happy accident in some ways. That's a new way of getting at it. But
and they are both exercises that can be used and are appropriate for certain contexts. But I think the overemphasis of the speed, we missed a big key, which was that we were trying to overload the eccentric with the big drop. That's what we were chasing. That's what they were chasing back then.
Whereas I think so that's the high hanging fruit, doing that stuff. Because we had crazy strong, crazy mobile, beautifully moving athletes that needed to be he needed to find a way to, because they were chasing gold medals, so they were chasing the absolute pointiest end of sport. Whereas the low hanging fruit, the smart play is, we visited Athletes Authority the other week, and Lockie Wilmot is one of the coaches there, one of the owners there, and he's a very renowned plyometrics expert.
I went and saw him at the Speed Summit a couple of years ago last year.
And
he's just great.
He's all about the low hanging fruit. Like, they're doing so much low amplitude ankle stiffness, just learning to bounce off the ground off not that much height.
Yeah, and because that depth jump idea, that depth jump, drop jump confusion was where plyometrics started. And so everyone thinks, that has to be plyometrics.
And if it's not that, it's not plyometrics.
But plyometrics is a continuum that starts with your ankle stiffness exercises.
And plyometrics, the word, it just means, like, metrics is just metrics.
Means to measure in Greek.
Just measurable improvements. That's all it is. So if you didn't call them, and so the sound of plyometrics sounds so exciting and cool. But he said, let's go do some measurable improvements jumping now.
Yeah. Because that's all they were doing. They're just trying to chase another improvement through the next method, the next step up for these athletes.
And so I think that the really smart thing for your average athlete is to just start with learning to bounce off the ground. So start with learning to absorb. Can you do a little jump and then absorb? And then can you jump and bounce? So don't chase height, chase quickness off the ground, just that ability to minimize ground contact time.
Chasing elasticity, I suppose you'd call it.
Yeah. And only once you've done that should you even be thinking about genuine plyometrics, where it's a combination of a bit of height and a bit of bounce. And then once you've done that, then after that, now you can start to maybe think about doing depth jump explosive stuff. But I don't know that it's that necessary for most people.
I actually think if you combine your high intent to move strength training with your lower amplitude quickness type drills, like the skipping and bounding and hopping and stuff like that, you actually get better benefits than trying to package it all up into a depth jump.
Yeah, I mean that's what we've done, and it's worked really, really well. Yeah, and a little bit of box jumping is good. I think throwing a bit of that in for an appropriate height box. I think that's the big thing, is getting that height spot on.
Yeah, because you want a height that challenges the athlete, so they have to actually get after the jump and jump with intent. But you don't want it so high that you then have to worry about the safety of the landing or the position that you end up landing, where you get to this high speed tucking type position.
Exactly. I've just had an idea for a pro tip that we can talk about. Do you want to do that?
Sure.
Right, let's try that now.
Hey guys, it's Jacob here. I'm out on the gym floor now with Pat for our Iron Edge Pro Tip. In this one, we're going to look at an effective tool or a little hack here to get the best height, optimize the height of your ply boxes when doing box jumps. What we're looking for and what Pat's about to demonstrate is you should be chasing identical takeoff position and landing position in terms of knee joint angle and hip angle. So Pat here is well above parallel for his squat position. So Pat, if you want to do your box jump now. This landing position should look exactly the same, and what you're looking for with your athletes is to have this position here look the same as your takeoff position at the bottom of your jump. It's as simple as that. If you get this right, that means you know you're getting good displacement, good height on the jump, and you're not getting rapid tucking on that landing position. So there you have it.
And so with your boxes, you want to get the height right. It's really important to get your box jump height correct so that you maximize intent, but minimize the negative effect of tucking, if you want to talk about that a bit, Darren.
Yeah, so when we're jumping, what we want is we want that explosive terminal hip extension. You want to jump and just really push the ground away and fly through the air.
Because if you watch a great volleyball player or a great dunk in the dunk contest in NBA, they don't curl up as they get to the top. They don't leave the ground and then curl up into a ball to do their, the spike or whatever it might be. No, they stay open.
They stay really open. And there's almost no functional use for that tuck jump other than achieves that ground clearance or that height that you can actually get into the position to land on a tall box. So, and the problem is that what happens is you're about halfway through that hip extension and suddenly you flex the hips to get the knees up to create the clearance. And so you're missing out on the thing, one of the most important qualities you're chasing. You're robbing yourself of that quality because you've gone with a box that's too high.
Yeah.
So for most people, they're going to get most of the benefits out of a 30 to 70 centimeter box. There's not many cases where people are like, oh, I actually need to be jumping higher.
No, you should be using the box to absorb the eccentric loads, and you should be floating up on top of it. So you should end up landing in the same position as you left the ground. So your landing position should look the same as your takeoff position. Yeah. If it looks deeper, then your box is too high, and so you need to lower the box and increase the float time, the hang time.
And I've had the case made to me that you need to have a really high box because it gives them a target, so they try really hard to jump. Like, yeah, but you could just coach them to jump really high, and you'd get that. You get that same effect.
You could just say to your athlete, jump as hard and high as you can.
Just get up there and then land. At the moment, one of our athletes, DJ, is smashing it on his box jumps. He's got a moderate depth. It's not crazy high. It's not so low that he doesn't try hard. It's that sweet spot. And he's got so much pop, and he's a big boy, and he's just looking terrific on it. And that's what you want to get, that appropriate height.
Definitely. Have we covered everything vertical leap?
Okay. So we've talked about the importance of mobility at the ankle,
mobility at the hip flexors
and the thoracic. Yep. I think they're the
mobility,
big three.
And you do that at home every day, 10 minutes. If you want to jump high, you should be constantly maintaining or trying to improve that.
I don't know you even need 10 minutes. I mean, that stuff's probably about 7 minutes, really. It's not that long.
Really quick. And you just do that every day. It's just part of your routine, just to maintain or slightly improve that constantly.
Okay, and then next you're going to do your activation and patterning work.
Activation patterning, so get your glutes switching on, do some bridging, get your squat pattern, your hinge pattern, get those things sorted out so that you can then load them. Yep. And that then ties into your strength side of things.
And basic strength.
Yep.
So do the fundamentals brutally well, accumulate some strength.
The more force you can put into the ground, the more power you'll take with you vertically. So it's just increasing your force capacity, but maintaining your body weight. So your power to weight ratio increases.
Yeah, and do some fast strength stuff. Strength stuff doesn't have to be a slow grinding your way out. It can be relatively explosive.
Yeah, lift with good intent for the intent to move that idea. And then from there is your actual movement skill of practicing jumping.
Yep.
So actually practice your arm swing, tall to smalls, learn to take off in a way that's specific to your sport. So if you play volleyball, learn to jump with 2 feet. If you play footy, learn to jump off 1 foot.
And then there's your whole plyometric continuum. And with that, I would say start with chasing the low-hanging fruit of great ankle stiffness and bounce.
Low amplitude, high velocity, high turnover type drills.
Just learn how to bounce off the ground and then gradually progress it over time. And yeah, you follow that. And the other thing is you do have to attend to your nutrition. So one of the easiest way to jump high is to get ripped.
Yeah, increase your power to weight ratio, not by increasing strength, but by lowering body mass.
Yeah, you could spend a year increasing your strength, or for some people, you could find a bit of a shortcut is just getting a little bit leaner can be quite helpful as well. But por Kennesaw DOS, you do it all.
Do a bit of both at the same time. Yeah.
I need the por Kennesaw DOS. That's just 2, isn't it?
Why don't we have both? Yeah, that's what it means.
Why can't we have all of it?
Why can't we have por Kennesaw all?
Nice.
Well, the DOS is 2, so it's something.
Yeah, all's good. That's great. All right. So good luck with that. Make haste slowly would be my advice. Just follow those things gently and carefully and get it done.
Nice. Very good. All right. We'll leave it there.
Thanks, guys. And before you go, hear from our alumni about the online mentorship.
I learnt the theory stuff at uni, but I didn't know how to apply it, and coming to Core Advantage was how I bridged that gap. So I knew the stuff, but I didn't know how to do the stuff.
It was something that I needed to do personally for my own development, and it's allowed me to work in elite sport for now 5 years. So it was a massive help.
I think mentorship is really important, and being able to ask questions all the time, and the Core Advantage course allows that because there is a big team of people that you can ask questions.
I get to train professional athletes every week, work really closely with professional athletes, which is awesome. A lot of the skills that I'm applying I learned through the program at Core Advantage.
It's not just something that you read and then think about and then go, oh, how does that tie into everything? It's something that practical that you can turn around and go, this is exactly how I'm going to apply it. And the concepts that you learn help you as a coach, as a professional, as a person. Yeah, it's awesome. Definitely go and do it.
Semester 3 of the mentorship, opening September 1, 2019.